A twisted ankle. A shadow stalking through the night. Silent footsteps closing in. How far would a boy go to survive the darkness? From Madeira to Immortality, the Cristiano Ronaldo story. How a hungry kid became the most relentless machine in football history. The narrow streets of Funchal lay cloaked in early morning mist. Cold ocean winds whipped against the peeling walls of a small, dilapidated house. Inside, a boy sat alone on a creaking wooden floor. His fingers trembled as he laced worn-out boots. The faint smell of salt and damp plaster filled the cramped room. Outside, the distant roar of the Atlantic was a constant reminder of the vast world beyond. Cristiano Ronaldo's heart pounded like a war drum beneath his thin shirt. Tonight was not like any other night. His father's shadowed footsteps echoed down the alleyway. A low, urgent whisper broke the silence. "Tonight, you prove yourself. Or you disappear." The boy's breath hitched. Fear and hunger mingled in his gut like poison. He knew what lay ahead. No more childhood dreams. Only the unforgiving grind of survival. The pitch was a jagged patch of earth beyond the crumbling stadium walls. Dim floodlights flickered, casting grotesque shadows on the cracked asphalt. Cristiano's eyes burned with a cold fire, reflecting the faint glow. He could hear the distant murmur of a crowd. Not cheering, but waiting. His legs ached from relentless training. Every muscle screamed against the cold bite of the night. A figure approached, tall, ominous, eyes like dark embers. The local coach, known for his ruthless methods, stepped into the glow. "Show me the hunger," he demanded, voice sharp as broken glass. Cristiano nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The whistle pierced the air, a shrill cry of impending doom. The first sprint was agony. His lungs burned, sweat stung his eyes. Behind him, the coach's footsteps grew louder, relentless, unforgiving. He shouted, pushing the boy beyond his limits. Cristiano stumbled. Pain exploded through his legs like lightning. The crowd's murmur turned to a low growl. He forced himself up, breath ragged, vision blurring. Then, a sudden snap. A sharp, excruciating crack echoed through the night. Cristiano collapsed, clutching his ankle, the world tilting beneath him. The coach's face twisted into a cool smile. "You either rise now, or you are nothing." Time slowed. The boy's mind raced. Was this the end of his story? The beginning of his immortality? The crowd fell silent. A single heartbeat thundered in the darkness. The single heartbeat thundered in the darkness, echoing louder than the distant crash of the waves against the rocky cliffs. Cristiano lay motionless, his ankle twisted at an unnatural angle, the sharp pain radiating through his entire body. Around him, the broken lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the cracked concrete. The cold night air seemed to tighten its grip, pressing against his chest, making each breath a desperate struggle. He could hear the coach's footsteps retreating, a sinister calm replacing the earlier fury. The murmur of the waiting crowd had disappeared, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the night. For a moment, the boy felt the crushing weight of defeat. Darkness crept to the edges of his vision, threatening to claim him. Yet, beneath the pain, a fierce flame ignited, a raw, burning defiance that refused to die. Cristiano clenched his fists, the rough ground scraping his skin. A distant memory flickered. The smell of his mother's cooking, the laughter of his siblings, the warmth of the Madeira sun. He forced his eyes open, blinking against the stinging sweat and tears. A voice whispered in his mind, relentless and unyielding. "You do not break. You do not quit." His fingers found a small, jagged stone embedded in the earth. He gripped it like a lifeline, anchoring himself to the world. The night was far from over. Pain blurred the edges of reality, but the boy's spirit sharpened. Slowly, agonizingly, he began to push himself upright. Each movement was a battle, every breath a war. The cold seeped into his bones, but the fire inside blazed hotter. Behind him, the shadows seemed to shift, watching. The world beyond the pitch waited, merciless and vast. But in that moment, under flickering lights and a bleeding sky, a promise was forged. No matter the cost, no matter the pain, he would rise. Because legends are not born in comfort. They are carved in the darkness of desperation. And Cristiano Ronaldo's story had only just begun. Suddenly, a harsh crack shattered the silence once more. This time, it was not his ankle. It was the sound of a door slamming in the distance, a warning. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked and silent, moving with purpose. Cristiano's breath caught, every nerve screaming alert. The figure's eyes glinted under the street lamp, cold and unreadable. For a heartbeat, they locked eyes, predator and prey entwined in a deadly dance. The boy's body tense, ready for whatever would come next. But before he could react, a low growl rose from the darkness behind him. Something unseen, primal, edged closer. The air thickened with menace, every sound amplified in the heavy stillness. Cristiano's mind raced, heart pounding like a machine gun. The shadows around him seemed to pulse, alive and hungry. He tried to rise faster, but the pain was a cruel master. The figure stepped forward, the cold smile breaking through the darkness. "You want immortality," the voice hissed. Cristiano's lips parted, but no sound came. The growl grew louder, a beast emerging from the night, eyes glowing with savage hunger. The boy's breath caught in his throat. This was no longer a game, no longer a test of skill or endurance. This was a fight for his very soul. And the night had only just begun. The growl reverberated through the cold air, thick and guttural, sending a shiver crawling up Cristiano's spine. He tried to steady his breath, but panic clawed at his chest, heavy and suffocating. The figure stepped closer, silhouette sharp against the faint glow of the flickering street lamp. His eyes burned with something cruel, a hunger that mirrored the beast's own primal fury. Cristiano's mind screamed for escape, but his body refused to obey. Pain from the twisted ankle screamed through his veins like wildfire. The beast emerged from the shadows, massive and terrifying. Its fur bristled under the weak light. A living nightmare crouched low, ready to strike. The crowd had long since vanished, swallowed by the night's oppressive silence. Only the two predators and one broken boy remained. The figure's voice cut through the tension, cold and mocking. "Do you think immortality comes without sacrifice?" Cristiano's vision blurred, sweat stinging his eyes. He forced himself upright, trembling but defiant. The stone in his hand pressed into his palm, a reminder of the unyielding ground beneath him. The beast snarled, teeth glinting like daggers, eyes locked on its prey. The air was electric, charged with the promise of violence. Cristiano's breath came in ragged gasps as he measured his only chance, flight or fight. The figure raised a hand slowly, a signal filled with menace. The beast lunged. Pain exploded as claws raked through the air, missing by inches. Cristiano ducked, heart hammering, adrenaline flooding every vein. He scrambled backward, the rough concrete scraping his palms. The twisted ankle screamed in protest, threatening to give out beneath him. The figure advanced, footsteps deliberate, each one echoing like a death knell. Cristiano's mind raced, memories of Madeira, the endless hours training, the hunger that drove him, not for fame, not for fortune, for survival, for the fire that refused to die. The beast circled, growling, a living shadow in the night. Cristiano's eyes darted, searching for a weapon, a weakness. The figure spoke again, voice silky but lethal. "Legend do not fear the darkness, they consume it." Cristiano's grip tightened on the stone. With a sudden, desperate cry, he hurled it toward the beast's eyes. The animal recoiled, a startled snarl ripping through the night. The figure cursed, stepping back, but the advantage was brief. Cristiano surged forward, every movement fueled by a savage will to live. He struck with the force of years of pain and determination. The beast howled, staggering, as the stone connected again. The street lamp flickered violently, casting monstrous shadows that danced and twisted. The figure lunged, grabbing Cristiano's collar, dragging him into the cold embrace of the night. The boy's breath caught as the world spun. His pain was forgotten for a moment, replaced by icy dread. The figure's eyes were too close now, cruel and unblinking. "You will pay the price." A sudden flash, a sharp, blinding light seared through the darkness. The figure recoiled, snarling. Cristiano's senses exploded. The scent of salt, the rush of wind, the distant crash of waves. Help was coming, or so he hoped. But in the shadows, something darker stirred. The beast was not done, and the night still held many secrets. The beast snarled, retreating momentarily into the shrouded darkness as a sudden flare of light seared the night air. Cristiano's chest heaved, lungs burning as a sharp scent of salt mixed with sweat and fear. The figure staggered backward, eyes narrowing, lips curling into a sinister smile drenched in menace. "Impressive," the voice whispered, low and dripping with contempt. The boy's fingers trembled, still clutching the jagged stone, his only weapon, his fragile link to survival. The world felt impossibly vast and merciless under the flickering street lamp, where shadows twisted like living things. Behind him, the ocean's raw pulse, relentless and cold. Cristiano forced himself to rise, every movement agony as shards of pain shot through his twisted ankle. The figure advanced again, steps deliberate and unyielding, cutting off any path to escape. The beast's low growl resumed, a terrifying undercurrent beneath the eerie silence that had settled. Cristiano's eyes darted frantically, searching for anything, any weakness, any hope. A broken chain-link fence swayed weakly nearby, rusted and sharp. The figure laughed softly, a sound like dry leaves scraping stone. "You think you can fight fate, boy?" The words sliced through the night, cold and absolute. Cristiano's vision blurred with tears and sweat, but his resolve hardened like forged steel. With a desperate surge, he lunged toward the fence, ignoring the scream of his injured leg. The beast snarled again, this time closer, eyes burning with savage hunger. The figure's hand shot out, grabbing Cristiano's wrist with iron strength. Pain fled, but the boy did not relent. With a sudden twist, he broke free and stumbled toward the fence, sharp metal biting into his palms. The beast snarled louder, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Cristiano scrambled through the broken gap, the ragged fence tearing at his clothes and skin. Behind him, the figure cursed, rage flashing in his eyes. The beast paused at the fence's edge, snarling and pacing, trapped but furious. Cristiano collapsed onto the cold ground, chest heaving, blood mixing with date. His ankle throbbed mercilessly, but the fire within refused to dim. The ocean's cold breath seemed to wash over him, a fleeting balm against the terror of the night. He closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the rhythm of his heartbeat, steady, relentless. Somewhere far away, the distant wail of sirens pierced the night, fragile threads of hope weaving through the darkness. The figure retreated slowly, lips twisted in a cruel grin. "This is not over," the voice hissed, fading like a shadow swallowed by the night. The beast's growl faded into the distance, but its hunger remained. Cristiano lay on the ground, broken but unbowed, caught between pain and the unyielding will to rise again. In the suffocating silence, the cold truth settled deep. Immortality demanded a price far greater than he had ever imagined, and the night was far from over. The distant sirens grew louder, slicing through the oppressive night like a knife. Cristiano's breath came in ragged bursts, his body trembling from pain and exhaustion. He pressed his hands to the torn flesh of his palms, tasting iron and grit. The cold ground seeped through his thin clothes, chilling him to the bone. Around him, the remnants of the broken fence gleamed like jagged teeth under the flickering street lamp. His ankle throbbed with every heartbeat, each pulse a reminder how close he had come to defeat. Yet, beneath the ache, a burning resolve ignited, fierce and untamed. The salty ocean breeze carried a bitter whisper, a silent witness to the night's brutal test. Cristiano forced his eyes open, focusing on the distant glow of approaching headlights. Figures emerged from the shadows, their shapes blurring in the darkness. Relief surged briefly through his body. Help had arrived. But the shadows shifted again, darker and more sinister. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the figure and the beast had vanished into the night, swallowed by the darkness. The boy's mind raced, piecing together the nightmare that had unfolded. This was no ordinary fight, no mere trial of strength or skill. It was a reckoning, a brutal confrontation with forces beyond understanding. Cristiano pushed himself up, teeth gritting through the pain. Every muscle screamed in protest, but he refused to fall again. The lights drew closer, voices sharp and urgent now. He reached out, fingers trembling, grasping for salvation. Suddenly, a hand clasped his wrist firmly, steadying him. A voice, warm and real, cut through the haze. "You are safe now." Cristiano blinked, the sharp edges of fear slowly dulling. But deep within, the fire still burned, relentless and hungry, because the night had tested him, and he had survived. But the price of immortality was only beginning to reveal itself, and the shadows were far from done with him. The hand gripping his wrist was rough, but steady, a lifeline pulling him from the abyss. Cristiano's eyes met those of the man who had found him, a face weathered by years, eyes filled with quiet concern and something else, recognition. "You fought harder than anyone I have seen," the man said, voice low but firm. Cristiano nodded weakly, every breath a battle. Behind them, the flashing red and blue of police lights painted the cracked concrete in harsh strokes. Voices rose, urgent and clipped, as officers moved cautiously toward the pitch. The cold night air was suddenly filled with tension, a fragile bubble threatening to burst. Cristiano tried to speak, but his throat was dry, words caught in the web of pain. The man crouched beside him, producing a small flask from his jacket. "Drink. You need strength." Cristiano obeyed, the bitter liquid burning down his throat, a small spark of warmth in the freezing night. Siren continued wailing, drawing nearer, but so did the shadows in his mind. The beast, the figure, were they truly gone? Or were they waiting, lurking just beyond sight, patient and hungry? A sharp cry shattered the tense calm, a voice from the darkness, strained and desperate. The man's eyes flicked toward the sound, narrowing with suspicion. "Stay here," he ordered quietly, rising swiftly. Cristiano watched as a man disappeared into the shadows, footsteps quick and deliberate. The boy's body trembled uncontrollably, pain and fear intermingling in a toxic dance. He forced himself to sit up, scanning the pitch for any sign of danger. The ocean's roar felt distant now, swallowed by the thick silence that pressed down like a weight. Time stretched, every second laden with unspoken threats. Then, from the edge of the darkness, a soft, guttural sound, a growl, low and warning. Cristiano's blood ran cold. The shadows shifted again, this time with purpose. Eyes glinted in the dark, reflecting the dim streetlights. The beast had returned, and it was not alone. Behind it, the figure emerged once more, face shadowed, movements deliberate. A cold smile spread across his lips. "You cannot run from what hunts you," he said, voice like ice. Cristiano's breath caught, every nerve screaming. This was the moment the night had been building toward. The clash between hunger and survival, between the boy and the darkness that sought to consume him. He knew then there was no turning back, only forward, into the heart of the nightmare. The cold smile on the figure's lips was a blade slicing through the silence. Cristiano's heart thundered, the rhythm echoing in his ears like a war drum. The beast stepped forward, muscles rippling beneath dark fur, eyes burning with savage intelligence. The air thickened, every breath a struggle against the invisible weight pressing down. Cristiano's gaze darted to the broken fence where he had fled moments before, his only chance. Pain screamed through his twisted ankle, but adrenaline surged, numbing the agony. He forced himself to rise, muscles trembling, legs unsteady. The figure's voice cut through the night again, cold and absolute. "You wanted immortality. Now you will pay." A flash of movement. The beast lunged. Cristiano ducked instinctively, the sharp snap of claws cutting through air inches above his head. He scrambled backward, heart racing, breath ragged. Behind him, the figure advanced, eyes gleaming with cool satisfaction. Cristiano's mind raced, searching desperately for a way out. His fingers brushed the jagged metal of the fence once more. With a primal yell, he lunged, gripping the fence and pulling himself through the narrow gap. The beast snarled, pacing just beyond, muscles tense to strike. The figure's voice followed, venomous and mocking. "Legends are forged in fire, and you are about to be consumed." Cristiano's chest heaved, every fiber screaming in protest. Behind him, the shadows closed in, relentless, merciless. He dared to glance back. The figure raised a hand, and from the darkness emerged others, silent, shadowed shapes with eyes like cold stars. The nightmare was no longer his alone. It was a hunt, and Cristiano Ronaldo was a prey. The shadowed figures advanced with chilling precision, their eyes glinting like shards of ice in the dim light. Cristiano's breath hitched, chest tightening with the weight of impending doom. Each step they took echoed in the silent night, a deadly chorus closing the circle. His twisted ankle throbbed wildly, a cool reminder of his fragile mortality. Behind the jagged fence, the beast growled low, muscles coiled like a predator ready to pounce. Cristiano's mind raced. Escape routes were few, the darkness swallowing every hope. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a narrow alley just beyond the pitch. Summoning every ounce of strength, he pushed himself upright, pain slicing through his limbs like knives. His legs trembled, but the fire within blazed hotter. With a desperate sprint, he bolted toward the alley, the sharp gravel biting into his blooded palms. The figures hesitated, snarls erupting from the beast, but they did not pursue immediately. Cristiano's breath was ragged, lungs burning as he plunged into the suffocating darkness. The alley was a claustrophobic tunnel of crumbling walls and scattered debris. Every shadow seemed to reach for him, alive with silent menace. He pressed against the cold brick, heart hammering, listening. The growls faded, replaced by heavy footsteps slowly retreating. For a moment, he allowed himself a shaky breath, muscles trembling with relief and exhaustion. But the night had already marked him. A hunter's scent now clung to his skin, raw and undeniable. Cristiano knew this was only the beginning of a deeper darkness, one that would chase him beyond the shadows, beyond the pain, beyond everything he thought he knew about survival and sacrifice. And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, bleeding pale gold into the sky, the relentless hunger, that monstrous force waiting in the dark, remained patient and eternal. The pale dawn stretched slowly across the horizon, casting long, trembling shadows over the crumbling alley walls. Cristiano leaned against the cold brick, his breath shallow and ragged, every muscle aching like it had been torn apart and stitched back together. The broken fence behind him was silent now, the night's horrors retreating like a storm spent but not yet forgotten. The weight of what had transpired pressed heavily on his chest, an invisible burden that threatened to crush the last flicker of hope. His fingers traced the jagged scar on his palm where the metal had bitten deep, a brutal reminder of the price he had already paid. The ocean breeze whispered faintly through the narrow streets of Madeira, carrying the salt tang of endless waves crashing far below. Yet, beneath the calm exterior of the waking world, a dark promise simmered. Cristiano's eyes, fierce and unyielding, searched the horizon, not for comfort, but for the next battle. The hunger inside him was no longer just a desperate need to survive. It was an unquenchable fire, a relentless machine driving him beyond pain, beyond fear, beyond humanity itself. He had glimpsed the abyss, the shadowed figures, the beast, the cold smile of death waiting in the dark. But he had not fallen. Not yet. And in that moment, as the first light of day spilled over Madeira's rugged cliffs, Cristiano Ronaldo's journey toward immortality had only just begun. The hunt was far from over. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the darkness was already stirring again. The darkness had not been waiting outside. It had lived within him all along. The beast, the figures, the cruel smile, they were not strangers hunting in the night. They were the shadows of doubt, fear, and pain forged by a world that demanded everything and gave little in return. Cristiano's greatest battle was not against monsters lurking in alleys. It was against the relentless hunger inside himself, the need to prove, to succeed, to survive at all costs. In the days that followed, the injuries healed slowly, but the scars within remained, deep, raw, and constant. He returned to the pitch, each kick, each sprint a defiant roar against the darkness that tried to claim him. Yet, the memory of that night lingered, a silent warning etched into his soul. The hunger that drove him was a double-edged sword, a source of strength and a shadow that threatened to consume. Cristiano learned that immortality was not about invincibility. It was about resilience, about facing the darkest parts of oneself and choosing to rise again and again. The story of the boy from Madeira is not only a tale of glory and relentless drive. It is a reminder that behind every legend lies a human heart, fragile and fierce, and that true strength comes not from denying fear, but from confronting it with courage and grace. Because no matter how high one rises, the shadows will always be there, but so will the light, and it is the light within us that defines our immortality.